We're going now to Lise Martin for 5 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to share our thoughts on Bill C-337. Women's Shelters Canada, formerly known as the Canadian Network of Women's Shelters and Transition Houses, brings together 14 provincial and territorial shelter organizations representing over 400 shelters across Canada. We believe that the introduction, and more importantly, the implementation of Bill C-337 is an important step in the right direction. And we congratulate all MPs who are working across party lines to make this a reality. Following the numerous testimonies that you have heard over the last 18 months as members of this committee, I do not need to convince you that the systems intended to respond to violence against women are broken. Recent court decisions in Alberta and Nova Scotia involving sexual assault and domestic violence have spurred public outrage. Clearly, Judge Lenihan and former Justice Kemp demonstrated a clear disregard for and the lack of understanding of sexual assault and definitions of consent as defined in the Criminal Code. In November 2016, Judge Deborah Paquette of the Supreme Court of Newfoundland and Labrador downplayed the severity of strangulation in a domestic violence case, treated the perpetrator as the victim, categorized domestic violence as a private matter, and sentenced the RCMP officer to only 14 days house arrest for assaulting his former girlfriend. This in November 2016. These recent examples, which are by no means exceptions, demonstrate how Canadian courts are failing to send the message that sexual assault and all forms of violence against women are unacceptable. For decades, advocates in the violence against women sector and survivors have fought to make domestic violence and sexual assault visible and a socially significant issue. Despite this, we continue to see our work undermined by Canadian judges who label domestic violence as a private matter and misunderstand the basic ideas and laws about consent and sexual assault. Enacting Bill C-337 to ensure training for judges working on cases of sexual assault is a demonstration of the Government of Canada's commitment to ensure that our legal system believes survivors. Training, however, must go beyond federal judges. Police, lawyers, Crown prosecutors, and judges all need training on sexual assault and domestic violence. For victims of sexual assault, police officers are their first interaction with the justice system. Since fear is the main barrier to victims reporting sexual assault and domestic violence, we need systems that support victims and does not cause them further harm. Our understanding of the proposed bill is that it only covers federally mandated judge. This is an example of why we need a national action plan on violence against women. A national plan could cover judges mandated by the provinces and territories and begin to ensure that women in all areas of the country have access to comparable levels of services and protection. This is not the case today, and this is an area where federal leadership is called for. In conclusion, mandatory and ongoing education, which includes the neurobiological impacts of trauma, the power and control dynamics of violence against women, the role of intersectionality, as well as the experiences of survivors with input and participation of women's organizations would go a long way. At Women's Shelters Canada, we would like to see training for judges broadened to include not only training on sexual assault, but also training on domestic violence and the gendered nature of violence against women, training to better understand colonization and intergenerational trauma with a focus on their impact upon Canada's Indigenous peoples, training for the judicial committees that oversee the appointment of judges, collaboration with women's organizations in developing training, including trauma-informed approaches, and finally, training that is shaped by the perspective of survivors as they are indeed the true experts. Finished.
Merci beaucoup.